describe the fact that we're showing footage of what happens in the meat, dairy, and egg industries and what happens in every other industry that exploits animals, that abuses animals rather. That's the other thing. Exploitation is a word I seldomly use because people translate exploitation to child slavery in sweatshops, and they don't think of it as animals getting stabbed to death and their heads cut off. They don't think of that as exploitation. So I just refer to animal exploitation as animal abuse because that's what animal exploitation is anyway.
This is a workshop that AV released in 2020. Not many people know about this. This is misinformation, like massive misinformation. And many activists followed the instructions on this workshop. And that problem is still going on today. Because people are defending the use of the word abuse. The word abuse is a welfarist term. It doesn't really convey the vegan stance. Even when the animals are dead, the use of animal materials is rejected by vegans. The idea is to reject all forms of animal use so that they can be finally emancipated from humans. From humans thinking, well, this animal has to be good for this, even when the animal is dead. Maybe the corpse of the animal is useful for something that humans may want to do with that corpse. Or whatever comes out of the body of an animal. Like, oh, the egg is there, abandoned, so now I'm going to eat it because the hen or the bird, well, the bird is not going to suffer because the egg is already abandoned there. So I'm going to eat it. That's the mindset that veganism wants to tackle. So the word abuse has been generalized, and this was in 2020, and Paul Bashir was telling everybody at that time. AV had about 1,000 plus chapters, so that's a lot of people. A lot of activists were asked to follow the instructions here in this workshop from 2020. The workshop is called Holding Non-Vegans Accountable. The problem with this is that the word abuse became enabled by an organization that is supposed to be the Abolitionist, the organization with no bullshit, with no intersectionality and all that anthropocentric crap. And this organization was promoting the use of the word abuse for people to understand veganism, which is not the vegan stance. It's a welfarist stance. Now, 2024, well, in 2024, last year, Paul Bashir contacted me, and we talked for about 3 hours, and I was explaining to him why the word exploitation is the right word. And I'm not sure he even got the point. And it was a very... Whenever you talk to Paul Bashir, you have to use this kid gloves approach, because anything can be offensive, you know. But he was friendly enough to invite me, and he was supposed to show this footage to all the groups or in a workshop or something, with a workshop that came out last year. There are many problematic things in this just small clip that I just showed, starting by talking about industries. It's like, it's about industries, industrial farming. That's what, if you talk about industries, what people understand is, oh, well, it's all welfarism. So if it's not industrial, there's no problem anymore. And then he talks about the problem with the word exploitation, because it's, no, people don't think of animals getting their throats slit as exploitation. And so the 3-hour conversation that I had with Paul Bashir was about the fact that it doesn't matter if even their throats are not slit. Veganism opposes exploitation, even when throats are not being slit, even when the animals are dead, even when suffering is not being caused. To explain that to a person who has been for years and years repeating the same pattern, like, oh, it's about this cruelty, this gory stuff that we are showing, it's about that. And when I was an organizer, I used to say, well, no, that's not the point. The point is that these are consequences of the mentality that we are trying to tackle. If we don't tackle the mentality that animals are here for us, there is no vegan point there. There's only a welfarist point if we just say, well, this is the problem. Look at this. Animals, the throats are being slit. There's blood everywhere. The shock value has to be there somewhere. And I disagree with that, because people need to stop thinking about cruelty as if that was the point of veganism. That is the point of welfarism. Opposing cruelty is the point of welfarism. And it's how animal exploiters justify whatever they do. It's like, oh, but that's not cruel. We have the sharpest knives. We have the most humane method to process and to harvest our animals, and it relies on the fact that since cruelty and abuse and all those words are so abstract, it means something different for everybody. It's like, oh, that's not abuse. Yeah, that's abuse. As opposed to the word use, which was the word that the founders of the movement wrote. Like, exploitation is the act of using animals by humans or for human purposes. The core idea behind veganism is to oppose the use of animals for human purposes. They thought about it for years just so that people understood that, well, this is not welfarism. This is a completely different idea. Now activists try to rely on whatever, like what Paul said here, using the word abuse and violence and suffering and cruelty, and we still see that today in AV's videos that are supposed to be like a guideline, an example, the role models that AV promote are people talking about the same things, even today. Last year, Paul Bashir tried to correct that message. Only that he didn't say, well, I fucked up. I made a really huge mistake. And he didn't, everybody's trying to save face in this movement. Everybody is like, I can acknowledge that I have made mistakes in the past. And when I was in AV, I made some mistakes that I regret deeply. And I can admit to that. But these activists, and the most well-known that they become, or popular, they become unquestionable. I have dedicated years of my life. Yeah, you have dedicated years of your life to misinform other activists, and we are dealing with the consequences of that right now. He's not the only one doing that, but a lot of people followed the guidelines from this workshop, and we are still trying to get rid of that. And the people who spread the misinformation are not the ones doing it. They are like, oh well, I did another workshop, and I proposed something different. So what? People are still using this guideline, and he rejected the word exploitation. Paul Bashir rejected the word exploitation for years and years and years. What does that mean? That the message that AV was sending was not a vegan message. If you don't talk about exploitation or animal use, you're not communicating the vegan stance. That's it. Because the core idea is to reject animal use. The core idea of veganism is to reject all animal use. It's about emancipation. It's not about reducing animal suffering. It's about emancipating animals from humans. When humans think of other animals as properties, as resources that we can exploit. That is the whole point. The whole point of veganism was not conveyed by AV for years and years and years.
I think your perspective of veganism is actually different to what the definition of veganism is. Being vegan isn't about being perfect, because there's no possible way that you as a human being can be perfect.
Pretend to be.
I can't speak for those vegans, obviously. But I know that if they're promoting veganism as some kind of perfect way of living where you don't harm any animals whatsoever, that's just an incorrect message. As a vegan, you still harm animals just by existing as human beings. We can't change that. That's not a practical message for each of us to take on. So the only thing that we can do is be vegan. And when you're doing that, at least you're trying your best to not create a world, not continue to further a world of suffering and death for animals. So yes, diesel fuel is an issue and agriculture is an issue, the way that we farm plants and spray the crops and all of that. But when you're vegan, at least you're not contributing to the greatest suffering on this planet and the longest lived injustice that's ever existed, and that's animal slavery.
Only last year they started to talk about exploitation, but it's like, oh, well, if we mention the word exploitation somewhere in the half an hour conversation, then all of a sudden the conversation becomes an abolitionist one. It's about abolition. I hate the word abolitionist. Even worse when they say, well, vegan abolitionists. Well, are there vegans who are not abolitionists? How come? Oh yeah, so I'm an abolitionist. I'm a vegan abolitionist, and other vegans are not. No, that they are not vegan. They are not vegan if they are not on board with the abolitionist principle of veganism. The abolitionist idea was proposed even as far back as 1944. The original idea was to end the exploitation, to abolish the exploitation of sentient life, meaning other animals, because humans are the ones doing the exploitation of other sentient species. Animals were defined as sentient animate creatures other than man. So that meant other than humans. Other than humans. It's not an intersectional cause. Other than humans. So animals were supposed to be emancipated from humans. Yeah. That's the whole idea. That's the whole point. By rejecting exploitation, the very same word that Paul Bashir was rejecting here.
And what happens in every other industry that exploits animals, that abuses animals rather. That's the other thing. Exploitation is a word I seldomly use because people translate exploitation to child slavery in sweatshops, and they don't think of it as animals getting stabbed to death and their heads cut off.
He had to try to correct without saying that, oh, I fucked up. I really fucked up. I hugely fucked up. Very badly. No, but acknowledging that would make Paul Bashir not sound as great of an activist as he wants people to believe he is. So acknowledging massive misinformation was not an option. So, well, we have a new workshop now. And now we're going to talk about the word exploitation. And then he made another mistake, because the word exploitation was defined by him as the use without consent. So we go back to Peter Singer's ideas of, well, when there is consent, we can just no, that is not the vegan idea. That's why Peter Singer is not a vegan, and that is not the vegan stance. It has nothing to do with consent. And now there are people doing the cubes and talking about fucking consent. Well, and saying, well, exploitation is using animals without their consent. So bestiality is okay. And now we are promoting veganism. But that's Singerism, that's Singer's position. And that is not veganism. And then we have people that say, well, we need to talk. We need to talk. Some people are saying that AV is welfarist. Most conversations out there that AV puts out, like this is a great example of a conversation that we want people to follow. Oh yeah, but do you eat animals? Don't you think that eating animals is animal abuse? Yeah, if you don't support abuse, why do you eat animals? End of clip. Oh, great clip. Isn't that what a vegetarian would say? A vegetarian would say the same. So that's vegetarian activism. Or somebody brings up the crop deaths argument. Then the great activist, the role model for AV, enters the realm of utilitarian calculations. Now, if you eat animals, the amount of animals killed is going to be higher, and then the hunter says, no, I hunt just one animal and I feed my family. I'm such a great man because I feed my family with the corpse of a murdered animal. The corpse in the fridge for 6 months, and that's all that they eat, according to dishonest hunters. But that's how they justify, because if we go into the game of utilitarian calculations, that's what they do. That's why veganism was never a utilitarian idea. Was never about suffering, was never about reducing, and was never about harm, and was never about, well, but you do more harm. No, but you do. No, it was about exploitation. If you exploit animals, it's because you think, oh, those animals are for me to get some benefit from them, and that's when exploitation is the word that illustrates the problem. So I think that other animals are here for me to make some fur coat or riding on their backs or whatever. Whatever use that people make of animals is what is rejected by veganism. There you go. Massive misinformation and lack of accountability, because Paul Bashir, he loves to talk about holding people accountable. This is like holding non-vegans accountable. What about holding people who claim to be vegan accountable? What about holding activists accountable? Are we not doing that? Is this like a friends club of people who just go out to the streets and want to be famous by going out to the streets and want to get applauded by going out to the streets and talking to strangers about something that they don't understand, about a cause that they don't understand, co-opting veganism, usurping the concept of veganism to promote the rejection of animal abuse? So a welfarist position disguised as a vegan position. Those are the consequences of bad understanding of the cause and bad misinformation and massive misinformation by influential people within this movement. What kind of movement? The welfarist movement, where David Rams promotes flexitarianism and reducitarianism and says, well, Tobias Leonard, he's such a great, he's such a genius. He has the strategy to make the world reducitarian. But we are going to lower the bar and call every reducitarian vegan. And now we can create a vegan world. That's what corrupt politicians do. Crime went down because some criminal acts were not legal anymore. Oh, so crime went down. Look at the figures. Look at the numbers. Oh, great. Under this politician, the numbers went down. So that's the great movement we have. Because it's not for the animals, it's for us. It's for us to make money and for us to pose as heroes. Oh, yeah, massive misinformation. Are we just herbivore
rights plural? I think rights plural is causing the problem here, because you're talking about a specific right, and you only want for this movement to be focused on that one right, which is to be not exploited by humans.
But the whole thing can be summarized by veganism. Veganism is the rejection of animal exploitation. That's it. That's it.
All right. Yeah. So
we don't need to.
All right. David, we're making some progress here because so far I agree with you that veganism, the term veganism, shouldn't be defined and used by its correct definition properly. Is about rejecting the exploitation of non-human animals as far as humans are concerned. That's another thing I want to point out here, is that we're not talking about anyone other than humans rejecting the exploitation of non-human animals. We're talking about humans specifically who are exploiting non-human animals. So this is a very specific rights violation that we're addressing. It's just one of those rights violations, which is the exploitation of non-human animals at the hands of humans. Are we on the same page about that?
Kind of, yeah. Can we talk about the moral?
Where did I lose you? Where do we disagree? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, can we use feathers as resources? Like if I want to put a dream catcher here, and let's make a dream catcher with some feathers here.
No, this is what I would say. No, because it promotes the idea that animals are resources for us to use for our benefit.
Exactly.
That's what it promotes.
Yeah, but
okay, the things I've come to understand from this discussion and from seeing your work online is that it is more accurate and far more effective to explain this movement, the vegan movement, as being a movement that seeks to end the exploitation of non-human animals at the hands of humans.
Yeah.
Right? Now, I changed this, I went through, you were actually part of AB when this happened too. So again, I'm throwing myself under the bus here because I'm a student of this game first and foremost. I'll never act like I'm some fucking know-it-all and I've reached the pinnacle already and I don't have anything else to learn. I remember saying, stop calling it exploitation because people think of sweatshops and people think of, it's a concept, and especially in other countries, David, like I was just in Taiwan and the word exploitation doesn't land for people. They don't even know like how to connect to that. Even in Chinese, I'm saying. So,
yeah, but it's animal
so
exploitation.
I started, no, I'm just saying that term would not land if you said animal exploitation. They wouldn't even understand what the hell you're talking about.
Then we can change it to animal use because exploitation is used for selfish purposes. So animal use.
Yeah, and I think, I think it's just the word exploitation or the word, using for our benefit. You're right. That could be the way we explain it, where you break down the definition of exploitation even further.
As vegans, we are opposing animal exploitation, animal use for,
David, I think that one thing you've succeeded in doing is you've made a pretty solid fucking point about the term exploitation being the core of the message. Yeah. So for that, I thank you because it's actually improved my understanding and my outreach and my training for others.